Hey guys, I decided I will be going to be making some videos about my favorite video games on the consoles I own. And I own a good amount of consoles, so I'm going to be making my top 10 favorite video games on each of those consoles. And today I am making a video about my top 10 favorite PS4 games. Like, I love PlayStation 4. It's one of my favorite consoles of all time. It has an amazing video game library, and some of those games on this list are actually also some of my favorite games of all time. And also, here's the thing about this list. This does not include games that were originally released on older consoles like PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 2. This is strictly games that have been released on the PlayStation 4. From the beginning, they were created. So any game that has been released on PlayStation 3 and then re-released on PlayStation 4 does not belong on this list. The list is strictly for the PS4 games. And I will say that PlayStation 4 has very amazing gaming library. Much better than PlayStation 3. And comparable to PlayStation 2. Yeah, and I am going to do my top 10 favorite PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 2 games as well. But let's get to it! Number 10. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Yes, this is a very good Star Wars game. Like, it has been a long time since Star Wars fans have gotten a good Star Wars game, since EA has the license to produce Star Wars games. But Fallen Order has proved us that we still can be getting really good Star Wars games. Like, in my opinion, this is the best Star Wars game since Knights of the Old Republic games. Like, the combat is the lightsaber combat is just amazing, probably the best in any Star Wars game. And Cal Kestis is a really cool character, and I love his story of being a surviving Jedi Padawan who's being hunted down by the Empire and still doesn't know much about the Jedi ways and the Force. And the final battle with Darth Vader is a very amazing finale to the game. Even though Vader is much more powerful than you and overpowers you very easily. Like, I love also exploring Dathomir. It's one of my favorite Star Wars planets ever. And I also love some of the boss battles. Some boss battles in this game were a little underwhelming, but there were a few really good ones, like with Terran Malicos, or the Seventh Sister. Yeah, those were pretty good. So yeah, I really hope the sequel will improve a lot on what the first game has done so well. Number 9. Spyro Reignited Trilogy. Yes, like, I have to say, to many people those games feel very nostalgic. They grew up with the PS1 version of them. Not to me. I've played those games for the first time on the PS4 as the Reignited Trilogy, so I have no nostalgic factor for any of the Spyro games. And yet, this Reignited Trilogy of the first 3 original Spyro games is so much fun, and it's one of the best 3D platformers I ever played. It's actually probably the best 3D platformer I ever played. The world design and the environments are really awesome and well designed. The jokes are really funny. The gameplay is also so much fun. And I really enjoy the story of the Spyro games. Like, of the Spyro, this purple dragon, having to save his world from the bad guys. Like in the first Spyro, all his dragon friends get turned into crystals, and throughout the whole game he has to be saving each one of them. And in the second game, actually people from a different world call for his help because because the villain Ripto took their world over. I actually think the middle of those three games is my favorite. And in the third game, the sorcerers kidnap the dragon eggs and Spyro has to rescue them. Like, it's all pretty good stuff, and I really had a good time playing that great game. So yeah, Spyro Reignite Trilogy at number 9. Number 8. Doom Eternal. Like, Doom Eternal is probably the very best first-person shooter I ever played. Like, the first Doom 2016 was incredible, but Doom Eternal was even better. Like, it took everything that was great about the first Doom in 2016 and improved on it so much. Like what's amazing about both those games is how gory they are, how amazing they are, and pure awesomeness all around. Like, you fight demons from hell, blast them to pieces, and it's all so much fun all around. But where Doom Eternal excelled compared to Doom 2016, for example, is the boss battles. Like, the boss battles here are much better than they were in Doom 2016. Like, Doom 2016 had like 2 boss battles, while Doom Eternal had like 5 of them. And the Icon of Sin, the final boss, it very much puts the spider monster in the 2016 game to shame. So yeah, first-person shooters, I'm very strict with first-person shooters. Generally, they're not like my go-to games to play, but Doom games are the exception. And I suggest you do yourself a favor if you own a PS4, and maybe buy both Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal. Those first-person shooters are really worth playing. Number 7, a Blacktail Innocence. Like, this is the game about Amicia the Rune and her little brother Hugo the Rune, and how they try to escape from the French Inquisition as well as the Black Death that's in this game spread by rats. The story takes place in medieval France. Like, I generally love medieval stuff. Like, I'm very much into Middle Ages, medieval stuff. Like, I like knights in armor, the corruption of the church and all that. So the fact this game takes place in medieval times already hooked me in, but I also love the story of the De Rune siblings, their relationship. It's a very beautiful and touching story. How Amicia has to take care of her little brother while together they are hiding from the Inquisition. And the game is very strictly stealth. There is not much direct action in the game, which is very different from what I usually play, but in this game it was so well executed. The game feels almost like a medieval version of The Last of Us. And here is an unpopular opinion. I never got into The Last of Us. I tried playing many times. I know it's the favorite game of many people, but for me personally, I never got into it. But this Blacktail is incredible, and it has a beautiful story, like amazing characters, beautiful graphics, and great atmosphere. Like, yeah, Blacktail Innocence is amazing. And the sequel is being released soon, which I'm a little worried about, because this is one of those games I never felt needed a sequel. The story feels very much complete. It would be more interesting maybe if they made the game set like 10 years later, like a game many years later, like 15 years later, and have us play as adult Hugo de Rune, how he became maybe a Knight Templar and went on a crusade. That would be something really interesting. But the game set like not long after that just continues to play as 15-year-old Amicia and 5-year-old Hugo, well, like I am wary of that. Like honestly, I don't feel we need that. The story of the Darun siblings feels complete. I'll be far more interested for a game set 15 or 20 years later about adult Hugo as a knight. That would be much more interesting. Oh well, we'll see how it goes. But the first Blacktail Innocence is a beautiful game and very much deserving to be on this list. So number 7, a Blacktail Innocence. Number 6, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Like, I'm a fan of Assassin's Creed franchise. Like, I love how you explore various historical periods throughout the world. Like, I love history. And I love historical fiction too. So yeah, Assassin's Creed Odyssey feels very much like a spin-off RPG set in ancient Greece, because it takes place many, many years before the Assassin-Templar conflict ever begins. But I think it works very much in the game's favor. It really gives the creators freedom so you can do in the game what you want, and you don't really have to strictly follow what was established in the previous games. Because, as I said, it's a prequel that takes place before any other game in the series. The setting of ancient Greece feels so historically authentic. Like, you meet real-life historical figures like Alcibiades, Socrates, and many others, and it's also awesome to interact with them and be able to choose what you want to say. And you have a choice to choose between one of the two protagonists, Cassandra or Alexios. I personally much prefer to play as Cassandra because she's so awesome, and I personally feel that Alexios is a much better Demos than Cassandra. And the visuals are just beautiful in this game, and the story is incredible. A story how you learn about yourself and find your family, and also how you fight the cult of Cosmos that actually took your baby sibling away from you. Discovering clues about each cult of Cosmos member is amazing. I also love fighting the legendary animals that originated from the real Greek mythology. Fun fact, I love Greek mythology. I'm a Greek mythology nerd. And I'm also glad this game, well, at least the main game, did not overuse the Greek mythological elements. It used them very much in moderation, and it works perfectly. It mostly used real-life history, with few supernatural Greek mythology elements thrown in, and I love that. The first DLC, Legacy of the First Blade, I consider on par with the main game, and I consider it very essential. The second DLC in Atlantis, now that's when I feel they went a little overboard with the supernatural stuff, but it doesn't change the fact that the main game and the first DLC are incredible, amazing, and very much worth a play. As I said, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is very much a spin-off RPG, and in some ways doesn't feel like part of the main Assassin's Creed franchise, but it's an incredible game, and if I did the ranking of all the Assassin's Creed games, which I will do someday, this game would definitely be in the top 5 best Assassin's Creed games. It's simply an amazing game. Number 5, Dark Souls 3. Like, as I already said in my ranking of the From Software games, I always had love-hate relationship with the From Software games. Like, I was always fascinated by their lore and amazed by the designs of the boss battles, and was always very much interested in them. But the difficulty always ruined it for me. Like, they were so difficult that I could never get through them. But those games had me under some sort of spell, and I'll always come back and try to give them another try. With Dark Souls 3 in particular. And finally, only a few weeks before Elden Ring came out, I finally beaten that game, and it felt so good. Like, yeah, I felt like I mastered something. And the game had everything I always thought it had. Amazing lore, awesome boss battles, and some of the best enemy designs I ever seen in any video game. And it felt so great to finally master it. And after I mastered the game, I realized how incredible From Software really is. And Dark Souls 3 is definitely one of their best games. As said, the lore is amazing, the medieval atmosphere is fantastic, and the enemy designs are some of the best I ever seen. And it honestly made me return and play some other From Software games. The first two Dark Souls games are definitely not as good as this one. This one is the best, and one of the best games From Software has ever done. At number 4, Assassin's Creed Unity. Like, I've always been a fan of the Assassin's Creed franchise. I already said it in this video that I'm a huge Assassin's Creed fan before. Assassin's Creed Unity is probably my favorite game in the series, which is a very unpopular opinion, by the way, because many fans consider it a very low point in the franchise, but I strongly disagree. It's actually my favorite in the series. Like, the graphics are amazing, probably the best graphics in Assassin's Creed history, and some of the best graphics in any video game. It also has my favorite setting, Paris. I love Paris, and the way the city is recreated in the game is just beautiful. I also love Arno Dorian. He's a really amazing protagonist, and his chemistry with his love interest, who's a Templar, is great and very well done. The story of the game is really good too. It's very standalone story, so if you haven't played any of the other Assassin's Creed games, you can just jump right in. I also love the beginning, how we actually see a backstory and see Jacques de Molay, one of the previous Grandmasters of the Templar Order, who really existed, being burned at the stake by King Philip. This actually really happened in history. And seeing actually it in the game is just amazing. So yeah, this flashback in the beginning is one of my favorite moments in the franchise. I also really enjoy the side quests as well as sword fighting in this game. So yeah, it has great story, great characters, and the best setting in the entire Assassin's Creed franchise. Thus, Assassin's Creed Unity, my favorite Assassin's Creed game and one of the best PS4 games. And now, the last 3 games on this list are almost tied up. Like, any one of those games could really be number 1. It's really hard to choose. Today I feel I'm going to rank them this way, but as I said, sometimes those games very much flip between my favorite PS4 game of all time. Like, so yeah, any of those 3 games now could really be number 1. So, at number 3, we have God of War. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the God of War franchise as a whole, and this last game that was released is actually my favorite game in the whole God of War series. As I said, I'm very much a Greek mythology lover, and this game that took place in Norse mythology was my favorite game in the series, which just shows what a wonderful achievement this is. And it also got me into Norse mythology, and I started reading it a lot recently because of this very amazing game. Like I said, I love Greek mythology, and yet this one, Norse mythology, is my favorite game in the series. The story is simply fantastic. The relationship between Kratos and his son Atreus, so well done, so touching, so amazing. And also, the game doesn't have as many boss battles as the previous games, but the few it has are probably better than any of the previous God of War games. Like, for example, I love the fight with Baldur, or Magni and Modi. Yeah, all around fantastic boss battles. And the Scandinavian landscapes are so beautiful too. And also, the references to the previous games set in Greek mythology, they don't feel forced at all. They actually feel very much essential and organic, and they make perfect sense. And honestly, as Jeremy Jans once said, this is a game you didn't know you needed. Like, when it first was released, I was kind of wary of it. Like, I didn't know if it was really essential. Like, I always felt that Kratos' story was complete, and if they wanted a game in Norse mythology, they could just release an entirely new game. But no, I was so wrong. Like, this game feels very much part of the franchise, and as I said, it's something we didn't know we needed. Like, yeah, I was so wrong. This game very much rebooted the franchise in some ways, and it's very much essential. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what God of War Ragnarok has in store for us. Like, I hope it might even be better than this game, which will be very hard, but it's God of War, and they've never disappointed me before. Santa Monica has never disappointed me when it came to God of War games. So I'm very positive for God of War Ragnarok. And as a sense, this game, one of the best PlayStation 4 games, and one of the greatest games of all time too. Number 2, Elden Ring. Now, this is the game I could call practically perfect in every way. It has everything. Amazing boss battles, and amazing enemies, fantastic lore, and great open world, and great art too. Like, it's the greatest game From Software has ever created, which says a lot, and one of the greatest games of all time. Like, it's all around an amazing game. I already said a lot about it in my review. It's actually one of the very first reviews I've done on this channel, so if you wanna know more of my thoughts on the game, just watch that review. But, as I said, the game is amazing. It has some of the best lore I ever seen in any fantasy history. So yeah, just check my review if you wanna know more, but I will also say this. I am really counting on a DLC. This game truly deserves a DLC, and I'm really hoping for one. This game could even be number 1, but my number 1 favorite PS4 game of all time is, and by the way, it's also probably my favorite game of all time actually. Number 1 is The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. Like, yeah, Like The Witcher Trilogy is my favorite video game trilogy of all time. The first Witcher game was fantastic, even though if you can look past the outdated graphics and a very different combat, I think the first Witcher is very much worth playing and is all around amazing. The second Witcher, well, if you have a problem with the first Witcher, then don't worry. The second one improves on the graphics and the combat department, but story-wise I say it's equal in quality to the first game. But the third game is way above both of the first two Witcher games, which says a lot considering how much I love the first two Witcher games. But the third game is way above them both. Like, the story is very engaging and fascinating. The characters are great. Like, I love Geralt and Ciri and Yennefer and Triss and Zoltan. And Eredin is a really cool villain. So yeah, the characters are great too. The graphics are beautiful. And it's definitely the best RPG ever made. I love RPGs a lot. Like, and the side quests are really cool. Yeah, like this game require a whole separate review for me to really talk about how awesome this game is. And like, and what I haven't actually read the Witcher books. I know, I definitely should. I keep hearing from friends how great they are, even though I've never read the books. But as I said, I very much adore the video game trilogy. It's my favorite video game trilogy of all time, and I really probably should read the books, yeah. And the DLCs for this game are both great. Like, I slightly prefer the first DLC, Hearts of Stone, over Blood and Wine. But yeah, both DLCs are amazing. I actually heard that if you read the books, this game is even better and more emotional, which says a lot because I found it already very emotional. So yeah, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, the best PS4 game, and possibly my favorite game of all time. The Witcher is basically the Lord of the Rings of video games. Like, and the amazing thing about it is it has high fantasy of Lord of the Rings, as it has dwarves, elves, and many supernatural creatures, but it also has the grit and gore and politics of Game of Thrones. Yeah, it's almost like Game of Thrones and Lord of the Rings combined together. Alright, so that was my top 10 favorite PS4 games. I'm going to do a lot more top 10 favorite console games. I'm planning to do top 10 favorite PS2 games, PS3 games, Super Nintendo games, and a lot more. But for now, please tell me in the comments your top 10 favorite PS4 games. And also, please subscribe to this channel, press the like button, and I'll talk to you soon in another video. Talk to you later, bye!